Hello, Scrappy sock knitters. We are ready for the heels. The time has come that we are going to pick up the stitches underneath the stitch marker, and the stitch marker in the form of a piece of scrap yarn. I showed you that because if you don't have these nifty little stitch markers, you can use a piece of thread. It doesn't matter. Either way is good. So let me tell you and show you what we're going to do now. You see that the stitch is at a point where the heel should go now. The plan now is to pick up all the stitches that are underneath that stitch, and when we do the second sock and we turn the thing around, above the stitch marker. And after that, when all the stitches are secure, we are going to cut this stitch. So what we do now is we take the row that is beneath the stitch and the stitch marker. So don't take this row, but the one below, and we're going to go with the needle to the right, and I always like to pick up the right part, the right leg of the stitch that's underneath there. So this one. Let me zoom in. Can you see it? I hope you can see it. The right leg. It's a bit fiddly at first, this one. And then pick up all the other right legs. Be consequent in that. Don't pick up the right from one stitch and the left from the other one, you know. Be consequent in that. So pick up all the right legs. And in this case I have help because there is an obvious change in color, and that can help you. To see where the row is where you have to pick up the stitches. Now, if I've done this correctly, there should be 28. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 14, 16, 18, 20, 2, 4, 6, 8. Yes, because I have, for my measurement, I need 28 stitches. Now what you do now is notice that I have the toes at the bottom. You can turn it the other way around, it doesn't matter, but I like to have the toes in the lower part here. So what you do now is you pick up the other sock and do the same. So we have to identify first where the stitch is that we are going to cut later. Here, so I need the row. You see, this is harder to find the row which you need because it's all in one color. It's a bit fiddly. But I promise you, if you have done this a few times, you won't have any trouble. Just be consequent in the, which part, leg of the stitch you pick up. And it's not a big deal if you make a mistake. You can correct that later. Oh, no, now I'm going wrong. Oh, this is hard to see because it's dark grayish. let's see, there should be 28. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 4, 6, 8, 9. I have one extra. Where did I go wrong? Well, it can easily be handled if you just leave the one on the end. So now I have 28 here, 28 there. Now I will pull the needle through and just turn the work, and then do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so you will have to leave the row where the stitch marker is in between the rows that you're going to pick up the stitches from. Okay, see, the row where the stitch marker is in between the needles. Let's count. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22, 4, 6. No, I have too many. Let's skip this one. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22, 4, 6, 8, and one too many. See, now they line up. I had the sock a little bit twisted, so I picked up more stitches than I needed. This one lines up with this one. See, this one lines up with this one, so that's 28. Okay, so not this row, but this row we're going to pick up the stitches. Sorry, out of frame again. And I had the left leg, so that was not good. This is the row in between. I should have this row. It's a bit hard to see when I'm filming at the same time, because the camera is hanging in my way. Where are we? Here are we. You notice that a lighter color around this part of the sock is easier to pick up than a darker. That doesn't mean you have to plan it, but it helps. Let's see. I think we're good, but 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 14, 16, 18, 20, 2, 4, 6, 8, yes. Okay, there we go. The stitches are all secure. I'll get some scissors. And a darning needle. We can use the needle. I'll show you, but okay. Turn the work around now. This is the scary part, right? we are going to cut the stitch where the stitch marker is. This is the hardest part, cutting your own knitting. And what we're going to do now, it's very easy. You're going to unravel to the left, and to the right, because you have two ends here. You can do this with the darning needle that I just picked up, or if your magic loop needles are long enough, you can use one of the points, one of the needles here to do it. Okay, either way it will work out fine. Okay, I'm going to pause now. I'm going to unravel to the left and to the right, and usually I leave one stitch here on the outside and also on this outside, and the same goes for the other sock. And I do that to prevent a hole forming here, because we're going to start with a new yarn here, and if you have a wide gap here, if you would pick up all the stitches, so all the 28 unravel, sorry, all the stitches, you probably have a hole here. So what I do is, if I go all the way to the left, oh, that's an end that we have to weave in later. That's not the right thread. This is the right thread. So we go all the way to the left and also to the right, and then the second sock, all but one stitch. You could do two, but usually I do one. Now if you have a high arch, the next step I'm going to show you, it will be that because you take away a stitch here and there, you have less stitches to form the heel. So it could be that it's a little bit tight for you. I always solve that problem by knitting a few more rounds before I start the decreases. So that will make the heel larger. I'll show you when I am ready to do that. Now you see here 2 stitches, and I leave this. Okay, I'll come back when I have 2 big holes here, and then we're ready for the next step. I'll come back. Okay, I'm back with 2 big holes. It's going to be fine. The heels are going to go here, and what I'm going to show you now and do is we're going to knit the toe again, but then reversed. So instead of knitting around and increasing around like we did with the toes, we're going to knit around for both socks and then decrease 2 stitches on either side of the sock. Okay, here are the little threads that I unraveled to the left and to the right. To make it easier, I'll put them in the sock and deal with them later when we are ready to sew in all the ends. Remember, you don't have to sew in the ends when you use the Clasp Weft join. You can just cut the thread, because you have knitted with both the old thread and the new thread for a few stitches, so they're secure. You can just cut them. I never do. I need to be sure that they stay where they're supposed to stay. So I will sew the ends in. And for me, it's not the end of the world. It's part of knitting a sock. And if you knit scrappy socks, you have a lot of ends to weave in sometimes, you know. Okay, now let's start with the blue to keep them in order, because I'm in a mood like that. You know, when I'm in the mood to rebel, I will use the red or a totally different color. And that's totally up to you. It's your sock, you decide. Okay, you can see that in some cases the stitches are twisted. That's because you picked up the left or the right leg of in what I showed you earlier. That's perfectly fine. If you don't have the right leg in front, but you have the left leg in front, you just stick your needle in the back of the stitch, no problem. I don't use the clasp Weft joint here, but I do a few stitches with the new color with a double thread. And notice that I'm like that. I always do this with the throwing method, like I learned how to knit with the thread in my right hand. And after a few stitches, I leave the double thread and I'll continue with the single. And notice that now my stitches are faced with the right side, with the right leg forward, so I don't have to do this again. You just knit them like you see them. Okay. And if this is a big stitch which makes a hole, what I tend to do is, if the right leg is forward, I stick my needle in the back, so I make this a little bit smaller. But don't worry if it's a hole now or a big stitch, because if you're going to sew in the ends here in the corners of the sock, of the heel, I use the thread to weave in a few stitches, and just like when you're mending a sock, so this will become smaller. I'll be sure to film that also, so you can see. Here it's the same. Now I use the red for the other sock. Oh, I made a knot. That's not what I want. So the first stitch is a little bit large, but that's okay. See, now it's twisted again, so I have to knit in the back. Just 4 or 5 stitches. This one is twisted. Oops. This one too. That's okay. You know how to fix this, right? Okay. So knit all the way to the end. And you only have the twisted stitches in the first round. If you have knitted one whole round for both socks, that will be gone. You don't have to worry about that anymore. See, it's a big stitch. I'll twist it and finish it off. Okay, turn the work like we always do when we knit magic loop. I always get rid of the the short ends to prevent myself from knitting with it. And I don't like the mess when I'm working. 2 balls to handle is enough for me now. Just pull it fairly tight. Okay, what you're now going to do is knit all the way to the end, and that's your first full round for both socks. And now is the time to decide if what I said earlier, if you know you have a high arch, decide whether or not to do 1 more round without decreasing, or even 3 to give you more room for your arch and your heel, because that's connected to each other, right? If you have an high arch, you need a bigger heel. I usually don't have to do that, so my total was 28 stitches. I left 1 here and 1 here closed, not unraveled, so basically I have a total of 26 to make the heel. No, that's not correct. I have the same amount, but it's a little bit tighter. There's no hole. Okay. Well, I'll show you the way I decrease. And the way I decrease is like this. I knit the first stitch, like so, and on the right side I do slip, slip, and then put your needle in. It's a bit awkward because they're tight, and then knit that stitch. So you have made 2 stitches out of 3. And the reason why I do the second and the third stitch, and on the other hand, on the other side, not the last 2 stitches, but the last stitch before that and the last stitch before that, so these 2 stitches instead of these 2, is that I will get a sock and show you. It gives a nice, do I have one here? Yeah. Look, it gives a sort of a band here, which is not, you don't feel that, because a lot of people, when they look at my socks, they say, isn't that awkward in your sock, in your shoes, or do you feel it when you're wearing it? No. For me, no. It's fine. And you get the nice band like that. Okay. When I'm at the end of the sock, I don't do the slip slip knit, because that's the way it's called, decrease, but I do knit 2 together, and that makes a wonderful slanting decrease. Here it's to the left and there it's to the right. That's because well, what those decreases, those types of decreases do. See, I've come to the last 3. Make some room for my needle, knit 2 together, and knit the last stitch. Don't worry about the awkwardness there. We're going to fix that when we're weaving in the ends. Okay, knit one stitch. It's a bit tight. The first row is a bit awkward. The coming rows are easier. Slip, slip, knit, and we have decreased one stitch on one side of the sock. Now don't forget to do it on the other end of the sock, right? Just like your toes, and you're going to get a toe, but then again in reverse. It makes a perfect heel. For my feet, it could be that the whole Afterthought heel for your feet is not the right fit. Well, then you will have to find another. No feet are the same. Okay, knit two together and knit one. Okay, I will leave you now, and I will do my homework, and that is to do the same thing I did now. So alternate one full round without decreasing, and then you do a round with 1, 2, 3, 4 decreases. So you get the toe in reverse. I'll come back when I've done my homework. Okay? Hi, I'm back with 2 heels that are nearly done. Just one more thing to do. I must say, when I was picking up the stitches to make the Afterthought heel, I made a mistake. Well, it happens. First of all, I was talking about being consistent, and I used the Dutch word consequent. In my mind, I was saying consistent, but when I rewatched the part where I pick up the stitches, I was talking about being consequent. So that's rubbish. That's not English. Being consistent. So that means that if you're picking up the stitches, either take the right leg of the stitch or the left, but don't mix them up, because you get into trouble if you do. And I got into trouble because when I was picking up the white grayish part here, if you look closely and you see me going wrong, I think I go down a row instead of keeping on the same row while picking up the stitches. So I had to fix that. But you know, if it happens to you, it's only a learning moment. You learn from that and you fix your mistakes. So what we're going to do now is I have 12 stitches for each sock left. 12 on this side, on the other side, and the same goes for the first sock. Now we're going to cut the thread, and then we're going to do the Kitchener stitch. Okay. Okay, make sure that the thread you're going to use is the right one for the right sock, of course. And your thread shouldn't be twisted around a needle, okay? It should just be on the inside. And now you're going to, I hope you can see it, yes, knitwise put the needle in and cast off a stitch, and then at the same time purl the next stitch like so. So you're just imitating a knit stitch. You're doing 2 actions and it makes 1 stitch, and at the same time you're casting off a stitch. So that was the front needle. Now the back needle, you do it the other way around. So you purl the stitch off and knit the stitch on. So that's the other way around. So that's 2 stitches cast off, and it will form a closed knitting fabric. Front needle, knit off and purl on. And just pull the thread a bit, but not too hard that it will move inwards. That's not a good thing to happen. Okay, the back stitch. You can always tell if the phone rings or you have to go to the door or whatever, and you have to put down your work, where your thread is, you have to work on the opposite side. See? Purl off, it's the back, purl off, knit on, and gently pull the thread. Okay, the thread is on the back side, so I have to do something on the front. Knit off, purl on, back needle, purl off, knit on, and pull the thread. Knit off, purl on, front needle, oops, there goes the thread. Sometimes that happens. It wants to stay on the needle, but nope, not gonna happen. Purl off, knit on. You're going to do that all the way to the left, and you make all the stitches disappear. Purl off, knit on. Knit off, purl on. And this is called the Kitchener stitch. You can find it everywhere on YouTube. I learned from Elizabeth Zimmerman. She was amazing. I have a few books written by her. She looked like my grandmother and she knitted like my grandmother. Back needle, purl off, knit on. Excuse me. Front needle, knit off, purl on. Oh, it's a bit slippery. Purl off, knit on, front needle, knit off, purl on, back needle, purl off, knit on, almost at the end. And the last 2 stitches I do just knit off and purlwise pick up the last stitch. Now you have a little bit of a point, but I just find a spot where to put it into the inside of the sock, and I'll deal with that later. See? And you have sort of the same heel as the toe. Okay, I'm going to do my homework and finish this one off, and I'll be back with the last part. Okay, I'll be back. So I'm back with 2 finished socks. Heels are done. I wrote the mantra I use for doing the Kitchener stitch. So it's the front needle knit off, purl on, and the back needle purl off, knit on. Maybe if you need help, remember it, write it down for yourself. It helped me in the beginning, and now I don't have to do it anymore. It's in my head, but it will help you. Okay, now I'm going to turn the sock inside out, and just like with any other normal sock, I'm going to weave in the ends. Again, if you're using the Clasp Weft join, such a hard word, you don't need to, because you have knitted a few stitches with both threads, the old and the new color, so they are secure. But if you like me and you want to be sure, you just weave them in anyway. I always go from left to right or right to left. There are people that are doing it up and down. I never do that, but it looks like a cool technique. Maybe I'll try it one day. I take the yarn, I weave it in a few stitches and go back. Not in the same, of course, the same row, but in a row below that. Okay, that's the first one. Cut. And I keep the small threads because I have a large, I'll get it, wait. Can you see? I have a large glass, what is it, a vase or a jar, where I put all the ends in. And if I knit or crochet little bears or rabbits or animals, toys, I use this as a filling. It's amazing. You don't have to use the commercial type batting stuff, the plasticky thing. I don't like that. You could use pure wool. Sometimes I do that, but I like to use what I have. So 4 or 5 stitches to the left or to the right, and then go back a few stitches. Okay, well, that's my homework for today, and that's it. Not sure if I'm going to film the end result, but we'll see. Okay, I hope you enjoyed watching knitting the Scrappy socks, toe up, magic loop with an afterthought heel. If you like what you see, subscribe or give me a like. If you don't like what you see, just scroll on and find somebody else. It's all good. Thank you for watching. Bye.